Welcome back. This is Ms. Waldron, and we are continuing Unit 2 with proofs, and today we are talking about proof reasons, theorems, and postulates. So you should have your notes packet with you. If you don't, please take a minute to pause the video and copy down these definitions in your notes. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So complementary angles are two angles whose sum is 90 degrees. Supplementary angles are two angles whose sum is 180 degrees. Adjacent angles, there's really nothing to add here, but I would underline their characteristics. So they share a common side and they have a common vertex. Linear pair, these are adjacent angles that are a line or they sum to 180 degrees. A right angle is an angle that measures exactly 90. A straight angle is an angle that measures exactly 180 degrees. Straight angle, or you could even interchange that with line. A line bisector congruent line, it basically divides it into two congruent segments, and this is two congruent angles. Okay, so really with these, I like to describe them as if you have gotten in an argument with your parents and your parents have given you the reason of, well, because I said so. These are the definitions. So these are the because, if you want to write that down, because I said so. Okay, they're a definite statement. We don't have to prove, these are already true, and so that's why we kind of have the attitude of, well, it's because I said so with these particular definitions. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to, copy down these terms, and I will see you in postulates and theorems. So for postulates or theorems, for all of these are always true. Okay, there's no need to prove the postulates or theorems are already there, and so these are really good ways to use in your proofs. And so all of these actually will be considered the reasons in your proofs. Okay, so for segment addition, I boxed in these two statements. These are typically your statements or your givens for these two. So if you see this given in your statements or in your proof, then your reason is going to be this guy right here, segment addition postulate. So these are what you're looking for in your proof. So two smaller parts of a segment make the bigger part, so AB plus BC equals AC. Angle addition postulate, so same thing. Everything here in the box, these are your statements or your givens. Okay, and so your reason, if you were doing this on the right column, would be angle addition postulate. So this is two smaller angles make up the big angle. So you're looking for any words with the term interior or measure of two angles equaling the measure of another angle. Okay, vertical angles, there's really nothing new here. Vertical angles are always congruent to each other. Linear pair postulate, two angles that form a linear pair are supplementary, and this is the really important part, the supplementary part. Okay, definition of a midpoint, this is actually going to be a reason in some of the proofs we see today. Okay, and this basically just divides it into two equal parts. Okay, and then vertical angles definition, they really don't need to know other than that they're made by intersecting lines, but we're not really going to visit that one a whole lot today. So pause the video if you need to go back and rewatch these parts. Make sure you have your statements and your givens boxed in and your reasons underlined. Okay, so number one, we have a given statement, we have a diagram, so we have to make another statement given based off of the information we're given with in the beginning. So that would be M is the midpoint of X, Y. And based off the statement we make, we have to give a reason on why we would say such a thing. Okay, so M is the midpoint. What a midpoint does, it bisects a segment into two equal parts. So that means since M is that middle point here, that means XM and MY have to be congruent, so I put the markings in. So because I know what a midpoint does, that's going to lead me to my statement. So that's going to lead me to saying that segment XM is congruent to segment NY. These two halves are congruent because of a midpoint. So the reason we could say this particular statement is because that is the exact definition of a midpoint. Okay, number two, my keyword here is bisects. All right, so BD bisects angle ABC, and look, A is missing, so we're going to put that there. So what a bisector does in an angle is the same thing as midpoint. It cuts the angle into two equal smaller angles. So that means if this is our bisector here, it means this half and this half have to be congruent to each other. So because I know what a bisector does, it bisects, I can make a statement that says angle, we'll do the top one, ABD is going to be the same or congruent to angle DBC. Okay, and the reason that I could say this statement here is because I knew the definition of an angle bisector. Okay, and moving on to number 3. So I want you to figure out what type of angles we have on 3 and then what we can say about those types of angles. Okay, did you figure it out? 1 and 2 are vertical angles. This means they are congruent to each other. So since vertical angles are congruent to each other, we can say that 1 and 2 are congruent. And the reason we can say this is because we knew the definition of vertical angles. Okay, we're going to skip 3. We're going to go to and skip 6, and we're going to go to 5. So 1 and 2 are supplementary. So my key word is supplementary. What do I know about supplementary? It adds to 180. So I'm going to start the first part of our algebra statement. I want you to finish the statement for number 1, an algebra statement that would suggest these two angles add to 180, and then give a reason why and see if yours matches mine. Does yours match mine? So measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180. So this is our algebra statement that's suggesting when I add these two angles they equal 180. I know this because I know the definition of supplementary angles, and that, my friends, is the reason for number 5. So go ahead and pause the video, rewind if you need to, and I will see you on the next page where we will do 8, 9, and 10 together. Okay, so for proof 8, I have the measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 2. So when I have two measures that are the same, that's also implying that my angles are congruent to each other. So that means angle 1 will be congruent to angle 2. This is by definition of congruency. You will have at least 3 or 4 like this on your homework. So because my angles are congruent, that means the measures are the same. So we just have to know the definition of congruence in order to finish proof 8. On proof 9, I give you that measure of angle 1, measure of angle 5 equals 90 degrees. Okay, so that means that angle 1 and angle 5 are what we like to call complementary. And this is just by definition of complementary angles. Okay, so I have to know my definitions in order to figure this out. So for 10, I know that 1 and 7 are a linear pair. So by looking at my linear pair postulate, okay, I can figure out what to put on the next 2 lines. So go ahead and look at your linear pair postulate and then come back and see if your first line here matches mine. Okay, so linear pair postulate suggests that because they're a linear pair, they have to be supplementary. So that's going to be my next statement. My reason is due to the linear pair postulate, which is what you looked up, or you could also say that's also the definition of linear pair. So it really just, depends on which one you use. They're both correct in my opinion. Okay, so my next line then, because they're supplementary, I can then finish my algebra statement. So measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 7 equals 180, and this is definition of supplementary angles. So I need to know my definitions in order to, make sure I'm using the right reasons on my proof. So go ahead and rewind the video at any time if you need to. Make sure you have these down, and then if you have any questions, just let me know.